Welcome to the new automation mindset, where AI, automation, and integration come together. Successful automation is so much more than technology, it's a mindset. On this podcast, we're here to learn about this mindset from innovative leaders who actually practice it every single day. From Fortune 500 companies to the boldest startups, these leaders have reduced cost, crafted experience, and fueled growth with automation. They have transformed their companies and their careers. I'm your host, Markus Zirn, and as Chief Strategy Officer and part of the founding executive team at Workato, it is my mission to find these top innovators in AI, automation, and integration and share their journeys with all of you. You may notice that this show matches the title of the Wall Street Journal and USA Today best-selling book, The New Automation Mindset by our Workato CEO, Vijay Tella. You'll hear references to the key ideas of this book, the growth, process, and scale mindsets throughout the show. If you'd like to explore them further, be sure to check out the book in hard copy or on Kindle. On today's episode, I'm joined by Sridevi Pasumarthi, and Sridevi is the head of business technology at Gusto, which is #1 rated HR platform, payroll, benefits, and so on. But you know what? I mean, I'm actually really excited about this episode because I've gotten to know Sridevi a long time back. Actually, one of our early customers at Slack, right? And I think it was Sridevi. I think what 2016, something like that. I think it's right. when we started, and then. The really cool story is that since then, I don't think you've had a job where you have not used Workato. I think every single time. So Slack, then you became head of IT there at Arlo. You used Workato. At Checkr, you used Workato. And now at Gusto, you're using Workato again. So it's so awesome. It makes me so happy to have you on the podcast here today, and just talk about your experience and automation and so on, what you've seen. Maybe let's start off just very high level. If you think about automation, what comes to your mind? I mean, I guess the question's a little bit around philosophy. Like, what's your philosophy around automating, about bringing business systems together?
Thank you, Markus. Thank you for having me on the call. So I take the winner spot for being a 4-time Workato customer, is it?
I think you're very high up there. I think there might be someone else also with the same number, 4, I think it is, but you are definitely in the winner circle, most certainly.
Sounds good. Thank you for having me. As I said, as someone who's so deeply involved in the business technology and automation, to me, I think about automation as a multifaceted approach, right? It encompasses so many things. One, it brings efficiencies, like, for example, streamlining processes, repeating manual repetitive tasks, enabling teams to work on better things, and providing for those kind of efficiencies. Second thing is, by doing automations, I think will enable free up resources and time, and this allows for more innovation. The third thing I think about is automation is the only way to effectively scale. Like, as the companies grow, in my experience, especially when you're growing at a compounded rate, the only way you can scale the company is through automations. It's very hard to scale with humans versus the rate at which you can scale with automation. The efficiencies increase at multiple folds. So efficiencies, innovation, scaling, optimizing processes, all these are basic, basic elements when I think about automation and automation strategy.
No, this is great. Now, if I remember correctly, I mean, your background is very much in business applications, right? Business systems. I remember, I think when at Arlo, you were kind of looking at consolidating, almost modernizing the system architecture. It's Slack, obviously, you were building it like really quickly from scratch. How does something like Workato, an automation platform, or you might call it integration platform, or I don't know how you would call it, but how's the interaction between? Because I think both is necessary to automate the business, right? You need your business systems, your portfolio of business systems, and then I think you need something like a Workato, an automation platform, to tie it together. Like how do you think about this in conjunction?
We went through a phase where everything is in cloud. Like we've also gotten to a place of having systems that are really good at doing certain specific things. Prior to that, we would have one monolith of, like, say, the oracles or things like that. But now you have specialization in procurement, you have specialization in onboarding, you have specialization in marketing, you have specialization across the board. So you have an opportunity to pick the niche. You're not just tied to a vendor, or you're just not tied to a specific software. When you have this ecosystem of having amazing tools that can fit your business technologies, the best way you can integrate is through a platform. And you need an integration platform where it feels seamless to the end customers, whether it is true end customers or like my internal business partners. Like you would want to know what your customer journey on your website, translate that very well into your customer journeys in market or wherever it is, right? So to enable this seamless flow of information or action or interaction, you need a platform. And that's where I think platforms like Workato and others play a big role. If this does not exist, then you're basically writing like code or like making it complex. But now, not only do the teams offer, like standard companies offer APIs that you can integrate with, but strong platforms also allow you to create your own endpoints. Like, for example, you create your own customer endpoint. This customer endpoint could be called by like 10 other applications. So you're almost making it like a very API level, API kind of enterprise versus, writing one specific integration to connect to one system. So it brings that level of modularity, and it also brings up a certain level of security and scalability, right? Like if it's one create customer, one customer status, whatever it is, your order status, like you have nice ways in which you can modularize this. So all these are possible when you have a strong integration platform.
Mm. I heard Gartner had that expression. They talked about a composition platform. We're using all these kind of verbs, right? Integrate, automate. Some people say orchestrate. Gartner came up with this new thing. They said like, what's needed is a composition platform that weaves together these business systems, the end-to-end processes that go across these business systems. Does that feel right?
Absolutely. Orchestrated across different business systems.
Yeah. So your title now is head of business technology. Mm-hmm. It probably beginning of your career, I imagine it wasn't that. It was like CIO or IT or something like that. I think that's also interesting, right? I don't know what that means to you. I just wanted to highlight that because we've seen here at Workato that movement to business technology, like really strong in Silicon Valley. I think it is not everywhere just yet. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But I'd be really curious for you to maybe explain to people listening here to the podcast what that means to you and what do you think the change is?
To me, the way I see an evolution of a CIO is it was considered like a very back-end systems, almost, your financial systems and everything towards a very afterthought kind of approach. But today, you partner with all of your stakeholders. You're at the table. If you're going with a new go-to-market product, you are there when you're creating a new channel for your customers to talk through. You are there when you're going with an M&A, you're going through an acquisition. Every single place, what moves data, what moves the customer experience is through business technologies. In my current role, I report into the CTO, and I also empowered engineering, design, data, and product, which is a true indicator of a product-led business systems. It's when we think about building, say, a health journey for a customer, we're not thinking about it like building it a business technology. We're actually envisioning how this customer is going to behave in our app. What does this mean to understand a customer interactions? How do we capture in the app as well as in the business to enable whether customer feedback or things like that? So such deep integration with the product, such deep integration with the business, and becoming like an enablers to whether, as I said, to go to a new market has dramatically changed. Prior to this, when I think about automation, when I started, it used to be like the EDIs and writing those interfaces. Like now, when talk about integrations, it's such a different one. It's almost like if Markus come to gusto.com, what do you know about Markus, and how can you help me convert Markus into a customer? So everything that powers that is business technology to some extent, and a tight integration with the product and the business.
It almost feels a little bit like a product manager's mindset. You almost like
Absolutely.
having like you're acting more of a product manager, thinking about, okay, what do these business systems do? What are the operational flows? And then really optimizing for the experience for the customer and optimizing for efficiency, I guess, at the back end.
100%.
Okay.
I always say that we are so lucky that we get to work with so many departments: finance, HR, sales, marketing, success, support, product, right? It almost feels like you can see the data flowing through. You feel like you're in the hub of everything happening. And it's on us as business technology to bring those insights, to bring where we see patterns, and just even recommend, as you said, as a product mindset, what can we do? We're seeing patterns. And so a very, very proactive approach versus, a back-end kind of, that's an evolution I've seen in my last 6 to 8 years as well. Significant evolution of what the role is and what's expected of the role.
Do you feel like you know a lot more about the business now as a head of business technology than, back in the day when you were the IT director or something? Probably,
Obviously.
right?
Yeah, obviously. Like when you do this, now you actually talk about, am I making an impact to our gross margin? Like, for example, there's an expectation that if you do AI, that directly will impact gross margin. So your mindset is almost like a GM, where you're thinking about what you do for what you do through your IT and business systems, and how do you impact either the top line or reduce the bottom line. So both ways, reduce the bottom line or increase the top line.
Okay. No, very cool. Look, you said the word. I was about to get there with AI, right? That's obviously, it's 2023, and somehow the world woke up, and now we're all AI. My 15-year-old son is all about ChatGPT, and obviously at Workato we deal a lot about it. What I'm just curious how you think about it, and maybe also how you feel it might interact with automation. Do you see a connection there? Do you feel like there's AI and automation together could be an interesting combo?
It would be a magical combo. That's how I think about it. At the moment, just like every other company, everyone is trying to figure out what AI means for their specific, whether it's a use case or the industry or the company that you're dealing with. For example, we've rolled out. We do our own machine learning, and we've been leveraging our machine learning to better understand why our customers reach out to us. And now we've gotten exposed to, we've been working with a couple of startups where when we get a customer case, we actually run it through a model to see how much a model can predict. So it's amazing to see that it can read our knowledge base. It reads our previous history and almost gives a draft to our agents, so that they are starting from something that's already, they're starting from a place of not zero, but almost like 30-40%. They've already known so much, whether it's about the customer or about the incident that the customers are facing. So rapid increase in productivity is what we are seeing. While it will not be a replacement of a person, it's definitely an augmentation. That's how I see it. Initial phases will be, let's augment what the people do with better insights. That's how the first step is. As we look to see and build, especially around security, understanding the how we do this ethically and responsibly, then we might see more and more of becoming a mainstream. But in the next at least a year or so, I see this as being a very great augmentative tool to the task that we do. So we also just did a small pilot of where we rolled out a AI agent in our product, which means as soon as you log into the product, it's Sridevi, and it's like, Sridevi, do you want me to run your payroll? And then you can make it do tasks versus you doing tasks. So it's a small pilot that we've kicked off. But these are the things, right? It can never, ever completely replace human, but it can make you more effective, more, taking out the repetitive tasks or telling you what to do next versus making you better. So that's how I see AI. And where automation layers in is, if I take about just a simple case of RPA, it was like, data in, data out, that's it. Now you layer on top of it AI. Now you have data plus understanding of what that RPA we did to bring out a meaningful outcome versus just giving a data dump or things like that. So multiple facets where you apply AI, automation. It's an exciting phase to be. But also, I think we need to, as I said, this work that needs to be done. So augmentation first and full automation later.
Yeah, I mean, I like the example you gave with the customer experience, right? I mean, just me as a customer myself. I mean, the worst is when I call up a support line and they don't know anything about me, and I have to start from scratch explaining the situation. That's really frustrating. If the vendor can start off and, at least they know already what happened and so on, and that data is there. I mean, that's such a better experience. I don't know if you remember back at Slack in the days, I think there were some initial thoughts. I didn't use any Gen AI or something, but I remember some automations we did where upsell campaigns were actually created from data in the data warehouse about specific users. And then Workato was the automation that then uploaded those specific identified customers to the marketing automation tool, for example. I think that was, I think there's a lot more we can do about that. So tell me, I mean, look, obviously we have you here. You have this amazing experience with Workato and automation. We don't want to stay just high level. I'm really curious to hear a little bit like the war stories. Like what's, if you think back of like Slack, Arlo, Checkr, and now Gusto, like do you have any top automations? Any top 3 list that's in your mind, like what you accomplished?
So I'm seriously fortunate to have worked at such amazing companies, right? Each of them had such unique products. Fortunate to work with the B2B, B2C, hardware, pure software, almost like a innovative, right? Like Slack was a new incumbent. We did not have Slack like before. So very fortunate to have worked in all these amazing companies. So at Slack, what was amazing is Slack was growing, and that's when we met Workato. For us, our goal was, how do we use Workato to do approvals on Slack so that teams don't ever have to go to their other applications? So we did a lot of PTO approvals, we did PO approvals, we did marketing automation. So a lot of opportunities to leverage Slack as a platform. Workato acted as an accelerator in enabling us to use automations on Slack. So that was an amazing experience. At Arlo, we built an e-commerce platform, which was amazing. Arlo always sold through resellers such as Costco and the big box resellers. And this was our own direct to consumer platform. So when you do something, when you're introducing a new channel such as direct to consumer, it's huge. So the entire e-commerce automation was built on a Workato platform, which included like fraud validation, payment gateways, supply chain integrations, customer support integrations. We also provided for a very personalized customer experience, which included integrations into our product. As you said, Markus, if you log into arlo.com and if you go to arlo.com at shop.arlo.com, we know it's you. We give member discounts because it's you. So all of that was possible because of this amazing integrations that we've done. So that was at Arlo.
That sounds like a pretty big project, right? I mean, it sounds like almost like like mission critical. It sounds like, I mean, obviously there's orders coming in through that website and probably a lot of work to get it right, huh?
It is. It was an 8-month project for sure. But at the end, now shop.arlo.com contributes almost to 10% of revenue, which is amazing. New channel you build and seamless integrations, right? So definitely, it's a complex project, especially when you're going through setting up your own store. It definitely is a complex project. And with Checkr, what was amazing is our IT engineers, our goal was day one productivity. That was what we called Checkr. Completely onboarding automations for anyone coming into Checkr. So we were going through a rapid pace of hire where, every time someone came in, you had to go, what does, say, for example, you join, what group is Markus in? What are the systems he needs to do? So we were all doing that manually, but we worked with our business teams, we worked with our HR teams. And our goal was if someone joins us, we want to make sure the department they belong to, that they give 100% access to all the systems they need to be productive on day one, which includes provisioning, which includes understanding their role, location, everything. So the entire automation of onboarding was done on Workato as well, which was amazing. It wasn't just, when you think about automation, while automation is a vehicle, like Workato is a vehicle, a lot of it starts from process and mapping out what it means to the business. So platforms like this also allow us to streamline a process upfront. Like when you see new business units, when you think about new ways to bring in, it streamlines how we think about it. It streamlines how we need to act about it, and gives us a lot of insights on what it is. We did a M&A as part of Checkr. We exactly knew what it takes to onboard someone. We exactly knew how many licenses do we need to onboard, which department. We exactly knew what to procure, and we exactly knew what not to procure. And we were able to do this entire employee migration within 2-3 days because we've honed that art of onboarding automation very well. So across the board, as I mentioned, a lot of amazing automations through Workato. So yeah.
And if I remember Gusto, at least back in the days, there was at least on the technical side, one interesting aspect was that you guys had a integration with your Kafka event queue.
Yes.
I think with Workato, right? Because I think that's the lifeblood where a lot of customer events and so on come. And that then feeds automations and processes in Workato, correct?
100%. As I mentioned, we are very deeply integrated with the product, right? For example, if somebody creates a lead on the website, automatically that lead coming into as a Kafka action, coming into Salesforce, routing it to the right agent so that the agent can directly speak to the customer within seconds. So all this orchestration needs to happen through a platform, and we use it extensively to many, not just like this was one example, but also customer events, like upsell, intent. We capture a lot of Kafka events and bring it into various business systems for business. Yep.
It's really interesting. So while you rattle off your use cases, and I'm pretty sure there's like many more, but these are the big ones, right? I don't know if you're familiar. We have this thing called the Workato Automation Index, where we actually highlight a little bit what customers do with Workato. It's actually on the internet. If the audience want to Google for it, it's just Google for Workato Automation Index. You'll see it. What strikes me is we showcase all these examples in like marketing and in HR and in the finance organization and so on. And I mean, you're spanning it all across your career, the last 4 jobs. I mean,
100%.
You've done it all. You've done the employee onboarding and HR at Checkr. You've done the e-commerce order management system at Arlo. You've done a variety of things at Slack with the Slack bots, which I think that was really cool. I think for both of us. I mean, it was very cool for Slack. It was very cool for Workato to build that out because that was. Before that, it was almost unknown in the integration space that you would like easily bring in a human step in the integrations, right? I think that was very 100%. Cool. But so yeah, you're like the encyclopedia across your career. This is kind of really cool. So tell me a little bit. I mean, examples. We learned about your philosophy and so on. We obviously also want to make this useful for the whole audience here. So I'm looking for maybe words of wisdom or advice. Like you've gone through this experience, if you would give one of your colleagues some advice, like is there something you'd say like, they should really focus on, maybe something they should maybe, not to worry too much about? I'm curious what's on your mind there. I mean, for someone to kind of really drive an automation agenda in their company.
So, there's so many lessons learned, right? It's very easy sitting here and talking about all these amazing things, but everyone was of a learning experience, which is great. That's the experience you build. To me, I always tell when you're going through automation, right? Think about it, what it would be when it's times 10x. Anything you do, think about time 10x. If you are able to, it doesn't have to be automation. Automation automatically comes in when you're thinking times 10x. So when you're building a process, sometimes it's so easy to say it works for today, and then a few months later, you're back again, and then it's a redo and things like that. But from the start, if you always say, I have 10,000 customers, will it scale for 100,000 customers? I'm 100,000 customers, will it scale for 1 million customers? So the thought of how you approach a problem is the first step that I would recommend anyone who's going into this automation journey. Think big and start big, and then slowly phase out how you approach a problem. You're not solving it for today. When you build automations, you're solving it for not just today, but to enable to solve for next year, 2 years, 3 years to come. So that growth mindset is super important. And that's when you start thinking about how do you modularize when you roll out? How do you bring these APIs when you roll out? So all of them are just thought processes that you should start thinking about. So for me, automation is what can you do 10x thinking right now. So that would be my advice.
Okay. I like that a lot. I actually feel like now with the AI, we're obviously like at the very beginning, right? All of us, we're all learning every day. But somehow deep in me, I feel like with AI and injected in the right way, we might actually get more than 10x. Because if we do some kind of a smart classification, or what ChatGPT can now understand, like a gong call, and then do follow-ups and so on. I mean, who knows? Maybe we'll do 20x. Maybe we'll do 100x. Who knows? But I think it's actually fascinating.
That's the mindset, right? Always 10x, and 20x. So when you think anything, what is today and what is 10x, you completely think differently.
I want to stay on this here for a second because we're running this podcast, right? So I'm doing like 26 of these episodes, and what my goal, my vision is, I want to extract from every one of them like one nugget, one kind of insight, takeaway for people to really reflect on, and then maybe if we put these 26 together, it'll become a really useful kind of list. When you said the 10x, it made me think, because I think what's interesting is that you started, I think, with a business mindset. I mean, you called it the growth mindset, but very much you started talking about, oh, how can I add value? Like you started with a business mindset. And if I go back like 10, 15 years, definitely when I used to be in the olden days at Oracle and I met CIOs there, that's not how they were thinking. They were thinking, how do I maintain my servers and how do I keep the lights on in the data center and, all the more technical kind of infrastructure kind of stuff. And it actually then brings me back to your title with the head of business technology. And somehow I feel like I wish, or maybe this is happening, but that movement to business technology, I think it is what's needed to kind of get to that growth mindset, to get closer to the business, and therefore you have the growth mindset, and then maybe you get that 10x thinking, and then it's the beginning of just amazing work that can happen. But without having that business technology kind of context, maybe you don't get there. I don't know 100%. What you think. Is that you feel 100%. Like that as well?
Yeah. For anything, right? Like when I think about automation, I always say business first and technology follows. It is so important to understand the purpose, right? Like what is the purpose? What is the role? How are you bringing value to the organization? How are you providing that service to your internal customers or external customers? Extremely understanding the business models, everything is so important that it pretty much is an integral part in how you develop your own roadmap to support that growth. For example, there's a 3-year growth. You see where the company's going. You see the product that they're going to be going after. You see the customers that they will be interacting. It could be direct customers. It could be resell. So you can envision how the company is going through the growth path. And then the next thing is, how are you going to support this through business technology? It could be, international growth. So everything starts with business. That's the mindset. How do you anchor business technology to the roadmap of your company? So without that, I mean, as you said, it's just keeping the lights on or cost effective. That's like maintaining costs and things like that. So that's
that's not what we want, right? I mean, exactly. Sometimes some people tell me like, oh, Markus, like we talk about automation, that's just, doing whatever we do today, just more efficient or with robots but I don't think that's the automation we're talking about here. I mean, it's innovation. It's like also, using technology to do certain business operations in a much better way. When you're creating like a new channel at Arlo to sell the product, that's not that definition of just doing the same thing, just more efficient, right? It's a new thing. You're inventing something. You're building a new business in a way.
I also think that automation is experience in many ways, actually. You're creating experiences. Like if you go to the chatbot, right? Like all these companies that you have chatbots on the website, those are all automations, but they also are building experiences with the customer. Whatever it is, I think at the end of the day, through efficiencies or whatever, we create experiences. It could be experience for efficiencies in your business partners or end customers, customer journey. So enabling those experiences, automation plays a huge part.
No, totally. I totally agree. And I think that's often lost. Automation isn't just for the back end to kind of do the balance sheet faster or quicker. This is about enabling new, maybe digital or data-driven experiences where the customer doesn't show up and have to explain themselves every single time because the customer support rep already knows, right? Exactly. I think that's what we're talking about. That one other thing, I just also have to say that business technology mindset, there's quite a bit of a responsibility for IT or a new role because a lot of, especially with AI, I think coming now, I think a lot of business people on the operational side, they might not just understand what's actually even possible. And then you have to almost explain to them. And obviously, if you know the business impact or the business value really well, I think you can much better kind of apply technology in the right sense and actually lead the business in a way, which I think is very different from what it was 15 years ago, where you just were told to, as you said, keep the lights on. And, you reported to the CFO and it was just a cost center.
Exactly. Actually, many places, they expect this of you. Like they expect what next, right? They hold you to innovation. They hold you to bringing operational efficiency. So that's the level that, I think that's the role. That's the new gen role, as you say, being familiar with what's going on in the industry, understanding trends, understanding how it's applicable to our company or the business units. And the other thing is also enabling teams to think through like that, right? It's one thing, we thinking, but also bringing the teams along that growth mindset to look for opportunities, whether through innovation or through automation, and being able to explain that. So it almost is like a job requirement, Markus. It's not an optionality. It is expected of the role, actually.
Well, first of all, thank you for being here today. I was very excited to hear all the stories, and I actually feel it even got more fun than I expected, just talking about where the journey is of CIOs to become business technology leaders and so on. And that's really what I would like to end with. I really hope, I think it's about the 10X thinking, as you said. I think it's about having this growth mindset, which our new book, The New Automation Mindset, also talks about, right? But I think I want to really almost challenge everyone listening here and say, do your research about this business technology movement from the CIO to the head of business technology, and then think about what that means to your growth mindset, and then think 10X. And then I think, use a platform like a Workato just to get to rapid results. And I think it's going to be you're going to have an impact on the company that just you never thought you would.
Absolutely.
So thanks for joining us today, and it was a very great pleasure. Thank you, Sridevi.
Same here. Thank you, Markus. Thank you for having me on the call. I appreciate this.
Thank you all so much for tuning into today's The New Automation Mindset, where AI, automation, and integration come together. If you want to learn more about the key topics we covered in the show, you can find them in the book, The New Automation Mindset by our Workato CEO, Vijay Tella. Also, leave us a comment and let us know what you thought of today's conversations. And don't forget to subscribe so you will never miss an episode. I'll see you next time.